Today, we're cracking open a case file on one of the great lost worlds of ancient history, the Harappan Civilization, also known as the Indus Valley Civilization. These people built some of the world's very first planned cities. They mastered some seriously complex engineering, and they traded across huge distances. And then, poof, they just vanished. Okay, let's get into it and see what we can find. Just look at this place. This is Mohenjo-Daro, one of their biggest cities. At its peak, you're talking about tens of thousands of people living here, in neighborhoods that were meticulously planned out. So here's the mystery we're kicking off with. How on earth does a civilization this advanced just disappear so completely that for over 3,000 years, nobody even knew it existed? To even begin to solve that, our investigation has to start where the very first clues were found. Because, for millennia, this entire chapter of human history wasn't just forgotten, it was a complete blank page. And it's really hard to overstate just what a shock its discovery was. Before the 1920s, the story of ancient India was widely thought to have started much, much later, with the arrival of people known as the Aryans. So finding this civilization, it didn't just add a new chapter, it completely rewrote the entire timeline of the ancient world. So the first real breakthrough happens in 1921, with the excavation of Harappa. Then, just a year later, bam, Mohenjo-Daro is found. By 1924, the head of the Archaeological Survey of India, Sir John Marshall, makes this huge announcement to the world. They'd found a civilization just as old and as grand as ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. And later digs at places like the port of Lothal and the massive city of Dholavira only proved how incredibly widespread it was. So the case was officially open. Now, let's put on our detective hats and really examine the evidence these people left behind. What can these silent ruins actually tell us about how the Harappans lived their day-to-day lives? And one of the most famous pieces of evidence you'll ever see is this, the Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro. It's one of the first things that grabs you, and it immediately tells you we're not dealing with ordinary builders here. This is something special. The technical skill on display here is just staggering for the ancient world. This massive pool was made completely watertight with a layer of natural tar. The bricks they used, all standardized, baked in a kiln to make them super strong and water-resistant, a huge technological leap over the simple sun-dried bricks others were using. It even had a clever water supply and what looks like a drainage system. Incredible. Right, so the sheer complexity and central location of the Great Bath strongly suggest it wasn't just the local community pool. The leading theory is that it was used for important religious ceremonies, maybe some kind of ritual purification. And that tells us something huge. They were a highly organized society with shared beliefs and a ruling class, priests or maybe administrators, who could command the labor and resources to build something this massive. And this perfectly illustrates the bigger picture of Harappan life. Everything was about meticulous planning. Their cities weren't just chaotic jumbles of buildings. They were designed from the ground up. You usually had a raised citadel for important public buildings and a lower town where everyone else lived, all laid out on a grid. That doesn't happen by accident. It takes a powerful central authority. And get this, private houses even had bathrooms connected to a citywide covered drainage system. That level of sanitation was unheard of for its time. All right, we've seen the macro view of their cities. Now let's zoom way in to the smaller artifacts. These personal items are the little clues that can give us a real glimpse into their world, their art, and maybe even what they believed. And here are two of the most famous sculptures ever recovered. On the left, you've got this stone figure often called the Priest King, and on the right, the bronze dancing girl. They could not be more different in material, in style, in their whole vibe. So what does that tell us about the people who made them? Well, the bearded man is super formal, meditative, carved from a soft stone called steatite. He feels like a figure of power or reverence. But the dancing girl? She's all energy, so full of life. And she was made using the incredibly sophisticated lost wax casting method, a really complex process that let them capture amazing detail and movement in bronze. So together, they show us a society that had mastered both stately, formal art and vibrant, realistic expression. Okay, next up from our evidence locker are these fantastic little seals. Archaeologists have found thousands of them. They're tiny, usually carved from that same steatite stone, and they are just packed with information about Harappan life, if you know how to read the signs. So don't let their size fool you. These seals were like a Swiss Army knife. They were pressed into clay to mark goods for trade, kind of like a company logo and a security tag all in one. They show us their animals and religious figures, like one famous seal that many scholars see as an early version of the Hindu god Shiva. And because these exact seals have been found as far away as Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, they are solid proof of a huge international trade network. And if you want physical proof of that trade network, look no further than the port city of Lothal. What you're looking at are the remains of what archaeologists think is the world's earliest known dockyard, a massive brick-lined basin connected to a river. This was their gateway to the Arabian Sea and the entire world beyond. So we've pieced together a lot about how the Harappans lived. But now we have to turn to the cold cases, the great unsolved mysteries that are still stumping investigators even today. The first and maybe the most frustrating mystery of all is their writing. Yep, the Harappans had a script. You can see it here on their seals and tablets. We have thousands of examples of it, but we have absolutely no idea what any of it says. Just think about that for a second. Every other major ancient civilization, Egypt with its hieroglyphs, Mesopotamia with cuneiform, we can read their writing. But the nearly 400 unique symbols of the Indus script, a complete mystery. Are they recording myths, laws, trade deals, the names of their kings? Until we crack that code, we can never truly hear the Harappans speak in their own words. And the second great mystery is, why did it all end? Around 1800 BCE, this incredible civilization starts to decline, and its great cities were abandoned. So who are the prime suspects? Well, one theory points to natural disasters, like massive floods or earthquakes. Another theory, which is gaining a lot of steam, is climate change, a shift in monsoon patterns that could have dried up the rivers they depended on. An older theory about a violent invasion has been largely set aside, but the debate is far from over. So, after looking at all the evidence, what's the final verdict? Their cities crumbled, their writing was forgotten, but did the Harappans really just disappear without a trace? Not at all. They were true pioneers in urban planning and sanitation. They literally gave the world cultivated cotton, and many of their cultural and religious ideas seem to have survived, echoing down through later Indian civilization, from the worship of a mother goddess to a deity that looks a lot like Shiva, and even the use of sacred symbols that are still familiar in India today. And maybe the most important thing to remember is this. The Harappan civilization wasn't an import. It wasn't a copy of another culture. This was a uniquely South Asian achievement, a homegrown civilization that grew from local roots to become one of the three great cradles of civilization in the ancient world. When you really think about it, finding this lost world was like discovering a whole new continent in the story of our shared past. It completely changed our understanding of ancient history, proving that the story of human ingenuity was so much richer and more widespread than we ever imagined. The investigation that kicked off a century ago is far from over. With every new dig, a few more pieces of this incredible puzzle fall into place. And that just makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other huge secrets about this amazing lost world are still out there, just waiting for the right clue to be unearthed?